How's it going, everyone? Welcome into the new podcast here on the block, the 3-4 podcast, featuring myself, Blake Holmes, and my co-hosts, Zach Holmes and Nathan McKenna. What you can expect from this pod is a blend of the big four sports leagues, the National Football League, the National Basketball Association, Major League Baseball, and the National Hockey League, along with a few other topics thrown in here and there. You may be wondering, why are you guys starting a podcast right now, especially a sports podcast, when all of sports are canceled on national television right now? Well, we are all under quarantine for the most part. We are trying to stay safe as much as we possibly can. So we thought now was as good a time as ever to go ahead and start something that we've talked about doing for a good amount of time now. And plus, with the NFL draft right around the corner, we might as well go ahead and get started. So stick around with us, as this week we talk the ins and outs of the NFL draft, which starts on Thursday, and the state of the National Football League going forward. If you like what you hear on the podcast here today, be sure to look out for future episodes in the upcoming weeks. We are looking to get into the swing of this, so if you like what you hear, be sure to check us out. Other than that, let's go ahead and jump right in. All right, so jumping right into it right here, starting off the podcast, as I said, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft upcoming, and of course, with the draft being on Thursday, not much time here for the GMs to have to make their decision in a little bit of a different format than what they're used to, being over basically strictly over Zoom calls and things like that. So starting off, we're going to talk about the teams that have the most to lose or the teams that need to do the most in the draft, whether it be they were in a good spot last year, they need to have that specific piece in the middle of the first round to get into the playoffs, whether something happened within the division that made them in a good spot to win the division, whatever it may be, the teams that their season could hinge on what they do here in the draft, not just in the future. So Mick, if you want to go ahead and start with you, the team that you think needs to do the most in the upcoming draft.
It's going to come across as a little biased, but definitely the team that needs to do the most. The New York Jets have about 357 holes on their roster, and they need a home run. I like Joe Douglas. I think he was a good hire. He's been in both Baltimore and Philadelphia, won Super Bowls as part of the front office staff with both teams. Did not do a lot in free agency. Let Robbie Anderson walk, went and got Brashard Perryman, who had 4 good games at the end of the season. But other than that, he's the same guy that he was for the last 4 or 5 years he was in the league. So they need to hit the home run with every single pick they have almost. They've got holes, at least 2 or 3 holes on the offensive line. They need a bona fide number 1 wide receiver or even a number 2 at this point. They don't have a pass rusher. They haven't had one since John Abraham left in 2008. They need the cornerback play. It's hard for me to get upset with whatever they end up doing because they have so many holes, but they really need to start building this offense around Sam Darnold.
And I'm glad you said that. Sorry to interrupt you there for a second. I'm glad you said that just because going into the AFC East, that was kind of my thought too. My team, when I first heard about this, was actually going to be the Miami Dolphins, just because they did a lot in free agency and signed a couple of notable big name free agents. But they finished off the season. They were the laughing stock of the league for a good amount of the year last year, but they got some traction. Brian Flores really seemed to turn it around a little bit. And that division, for the most part, top to bottom, is going to be pretty wide open for the first time in what's hard to believe, 20 years. So I have to think about it this way. Both the Dolphins and Jets, and heck, if you even want to throw in the Bills at that point, really all the AFC East is going to have their work cut out trying to find talent in this upcoming draft. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so my team was actually Miami Dolphins, and because sitting there at 5, we all know they need a quarterback, and quarterback, will make or break a team. And at 5, they can either possibly get the guy they want, or they're in prime position to trade up from 5 to any of the positions outside of number 1 to get the guy that they want. And one thing Miami has done in the past is been willing to wait, and I think it's hinged a lot of their opportunity. But as we all know, Tom Brady's no longer in the division. Do we really believe in Buffalo? I don't know. And really, it's anyone's division. And, it's going to be a quarterback-driven league just like it always is. And I think they need to go and get their guy.
Up next, we're going to go ahead and switch gears a little bit, talk about from a team to a player, our most polarizing player in the NFL draft. So someone who's going to come in, make an impact from the get-go, or almost command the locker room the minute they step into the facility, just saying, hey, this is my team now. We're going to go ahead and take a step towards the future. Starting off with Mick again, who is your thought of the most polarizing player in the draft and what team he'll potentially go to?
So I feel like it's going to be a little bit of a cheapie here. I think Joe Burrow going number one. You have with the Steelers, obviously probably one of the best well-run organizations in all football. The Ravens, same. But you look at it, what Joe Burrow might be able to do. The Browns are always going to be a mess. I just have no faith in them. But with Joe Burrow going to the Bengals, you have a real shot at him just being able to walk in, take control of the locker room, be Zach Taylor's guy, and kind of. I mean, do I think they're going to come out and win 9 or 10 games? No, I don't. But is that going to be Joe Burrow's team the minute he walks in? Yes, and he's got the swag, he's got the charisma. I mean, he's everything you want in a quarterback.
And I have to agree that was actually going to be my pick as well. Not quite looking like a cheapie now that with two of us taking it, but just because I think it's just the swagger and the confidence he's got about him. Going from Ohio State down to LSU, he has, the most prolific season by a college football quarterback in the history of college football. Wins the Heisman and is now projected as the number one pick. He's got the confidence. He's got the moxie that you're looking for from a quarterback trying to go forward and take a team to new bounds. Cincinnati has needed that's the position they need. They're kind of like, as we were talking about the New York Jets, there's a lot of problems and a lot of spots in that team that they need to fill. Plenty of talent to do so in that draft, and both teams have the chance to turn it around. With the Bengals here, I think you've got to take the franchise guy. You just lost Andy Dalton to free agency as well. I think Joe Burrow is going to be the number one pick, and I think it's a great pick for them because Burrow probably has the best potential out of any quarterback in this draft class to me. And I have to agree. The minute he steps onto in the facility, the Bengals are his team.
Yeah, and quick correction, Blake, but Andy Dalton's still on the Bengals as a roster spot. But
correct. Thank you.
No, I mean, like Joe Burrow, I think he is the unanimous number one pick, obviously, Ohio kid coming in off of what he just did last year. But I kind of answered this question a little differently by the word polarizing, but I think it's got to be Tua, because I think if Tua doesn't get his hip crushed in that game last year, then there's no question who we're talking about as the number one overall player in this draft. No knock on Burrow, but Tua is, there's a reason why he came in and took Jalen Hurts' job like he did. There's a reason why, yes, he was throwing to 5 NFL receivers on the field, and I get the talent and everything, but there's just things that Tua could do on the field that I think it will reflect to some big-time play in the NFL. And I think the team that gets him, I know there's a lot of question on his health, and that's always a question. But as the three of us have talked off air, is it's not the same NFL where if you take a guy and you're stuck with him for 3, 4, 5, 6 years and you're married to this guy. If his health's a question, you start over again in a year or two. But I think if his health is there and can figure. If he is as stable as everyone's saying he is health-wise, then I think he's probably going to come out to be the best player in this draft.
So you just mentioned Tua Tagovailoa. Let's go ahead and go to the next topic. You got Tua Tagovailoa, as we've mentioned, has some injury questions, has some problems potentially getting onto the field. But when he's healthy and we see him at his best, he's one of the best players in this draft, maybe even the best quarterback in this draft when everything's said and done. However, another quarterback that's been receiving a lot of hype, a lot of buzz, both have very comparable stat lines when it comes to college, is obviously Justin Herbert from the Oregon Ducks. He is also coming up. He's shot up the draft boards as of late due to a strong combine performance. In your guys' minds, obviously, you're going to have a couple of teams vying for quarterbacks here in the top 5, top 6 picks. If you have the choice, would you rather go with Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert?
Yeah, let me go ahead and start since I've already kind of given my 2 cents on this. Obviously, I think it's Tua. Herbert is I think he's a quarterback that could be very good in the league, but he also reminds me very much of a guy we've already talked about, Josh Allen, where great athlete, makes tremendous splash plays, but the consistency was just never there at Oregon to carry them over on the big games. So I think Herbert in the right situation with the right organization can definitely be, a very capable quarterback, very good quarterback, even potentially go to a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. But I think when you're talking about Tua, you're taking a little bit of a gamble on his health. But I think, like I said, if the health's there, I think you're probably getting the best quarterback in the draft.
Tua was actually my guy when you first said polarizing when we talked about this the other day that I thought of too, because I mean you read things about him and people either love him or hate him. I know Herbert's kind of got the 6'6" body. He looks the part. Tua's only 6'1". You know, he's injured all the time. But if it's me, I'm going Tua. I'm going for the guy who the man's accurate. He's athletic. I mean, he won in Alabama, but again, it's like a lot of players that come out of Alabama. He does have consistent injuries, and he is smaller. So is he going to take too many hits? You know, Russell Wilson's able to take those hits. Will Tua be able to at the next level? I don't know. As much as I'd love to see, well, I guess I'd hate to see Tua in Miami. You know, you look at a team like the Chargers who constantly take first round draft risks on guys who have an injury history, and you wonder if Tua doesn't end up there. I think it'd be a great fit with them. Those New Jerseys are absolute fire. So that would be a pretty fun look. But again, me personally, yes, I'm going Tua just because, and yes, he threw to more first and second rounders than Herbert had. I agree with what Zach was saying, but at the same time, like he's the more talented, better player.
Let me give y'all a stat real quick. And this was ultimately one of the deciding in my decision when it came to between Tua and Justin Herbert. A touchdown to interception ratio of 87-11 in 3 seasons and a conference that is probably the best known for defense, the SEC. Tua Tagovailoa has been known his entire collegiate career to take care of the football, make great decisions, get out of the pocket when he needs to. I can remember us watching him play against Tennessee, and he makes an effortless throw from his own end zone about 40 yards down the field in the run, right threading the needle. Granted, again, that's the healthy version. That's the best version of Tua Tagovailoa from the start that you're going to get. So there's still question marks there, but the unbelievable talent that Tua holds, I think, has to outweigh. I think Herbert's going to be just fine in the NFL. I think he's going to, especially if he gets into a good situation. You mentioned the Chargers. Chargers still have Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry, Mike Williams. Austin Eckler gets to step into the full-time starter's role this season without the Melvin Gordon drama over his head. So that would be a great situation for either of them to get into. But if I am a GM and I'm taking a look at Tua or Justin Herbert, even though I am a fan of Herbert's game, and as you mentioned, he's got the physicality, he's got the physical attributes that you look for in a quarterback, and Tua doesn't quite have the same look. I'm a huge fan of his game. I think and I'm going to agree with Zach. If you get the best version of Tua Tagovailoa, I think he's the best quarterback in this draft. Also, on the side of things, you're talking about the NFL and how it's a quarterback's league. It seems like smaller quarterbacks are becoming a lot more prevalent in the NFL. Obviously, you had guys like Drew Brees in the past, but now Russell Wilson has had his time in the spotlight. Kyler Murray comes in, and everyone was talking about how he can barely see over the line. Well, he goes out and wins Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year for the NFL. I think that's kind of going away from everything, even though you like the physical standpoint of a taller and more built quarterback. I like Tua's game, and I have to agree. I think Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback to pick.
Well, and to just talk a little bit about that Chargers pick that both of you brought up, Chargers are actually the team that I would like to see Herbert go to, simply because all the reports you read say the one big knock on him is he is not a quote unquote leader, which I think can be overrated and blown out of proportion to a point. But, the one thing people, loved about Baker Mayfield coming out of college was he commanded the room. He whatever you thought about his arm, his physicality, you knew who was going to lead those guys onto the football field. So I think Herbert going into a spot where the team is looking for a leader could hinder his potential. And going somewhere like LA, where you do have the Keenan Allens and these guys that have been there and have a little bit of identity, even though you can argue they don't have an LA identity. I think Tua, on the other hand, can go into a locker room, and I think he's talented enough. And what you read, like Mick said, depends on which story you want to read. But I think he is a leader and can go into a little bit more unstable situation, command the room better than Herbert can.
I have to agree, and as you mentioned, when it came down to him going to the LAs and things like that for Justin Herbert's sake, I think Herbert, one, he gets closer where he went to college up at Oregon. He gets to stay a little bit close to home. But as you said, I think when it comes down to it, LA is just a better position than Miami is when you look at it from a surface level. And I think the Chargers personally have the talent level to still go out and rattle off 10 games, potentially make the playoffs. Like they are, I think the 5-win season they had last year wasn't that great. Obviously, it's not what you want, but to say that this team that has these skill positions, these great playmakers, that they have a 5-win ceiling, I don't agree with that. I think this is a team that could very well go out and rattle off 10 games. They lost Phillip Rivers this year; he goes to Indianapolis, but you get a guy like Justin Herbert going out there who, and as you said, not expected to be a leader, just go out, focus on your game only. I think the Chargers could go out and potentially sneak into the playoffs, especially with 7 teams with the expanded wild card in the upcoming season too. So going from quarterbacks, we've talked a lot about quarterbacks so far. Going into just a general standpoint, the most important player in the draft, the one that can change the game the most, that isn't a quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and start with this one just because I think that my pick is Mick. You kind of said earlier that the Joe Burrow pick might have been a little bit of a cheapie. I think this one is too, just because it's Chase Young to me. Chase Young is going to go to a team. He's going to go to Washington, is the way it looks. Ron Rivera comes in, who is supposed to be known as a defensive coach, even though his defense is at Carolina, aside from a few gems here and there. Luke Kuechly, who retired this offseason, hasn't been that great, but he comes to Washington with a chance to revitalize the organization. There are a lot of holes, more so on the defensive end to me than the offensive end. And at the second pick there, Washington's going to take the best overall talent on the board. I think that's Chase Young. We saw him several times disrupt a game, completely change the tide of a game for the Buckeyes last season. I think he comes in on the defensive end position and completely, in fact, I think he's obviously an early favorite for defensive rookie of the year. To me, it's Chase Young coming into Washington. Whichever one of you wants to start, I'd like to hear your opinions.
Depending on who it is, really, I think it's going to be one of the 4 main tackles taken, whether David Gettleman finally takes one to protect Daniel Jones, if it's one of the guys that falls to the Jets to watch over Darnold, if the Dolphins end up taking a guy. I know Tampa Bay's rumors of them trying to trade up. I mean, they just got Tom Brady. They're going to need to protect him as well. I just think 4 of these guys, whether it's Wills, Becton, Thomas, like these guys are going to be long-term starting left tackles in the league, and it's a premium position. I mean, you went after pass rusher, which again I think is the other most important premium position, but like we've said it 16 times I think so far, it's a quarterback-driven league. But if your quarterback's broken in half and dead, you're not going to go a whole lot of places. So I definitely think it's going to be one of the left tackles taken in the top 12.
Yeah. So, Mick, I agree on the offensive line. I mean, only reason I didn't pick an offensive lineman was simply because of how deep this class is. But the player that I picked was Isaiah Simmons. And I know what Blake's talking about with Chase Young. I mean, Chase Young is the obvious touted defensive player in this draft, but Isaiah Simmons, I think, potentially could come out of this thing being, if not the best defensive player, at least a 1B behind Chase Young. I mean, the dude athletically is a freak, and the ability to get after the quarterback and roam the field from that linebacker position, I think just that linebacker position's become such an important role in defense in the way that the offense is played now that I think he could be a big-time get for anyone. I've seen everywhere between the Giants getting him and so on, just because Giants, they pick talent a lot of times. So whoever he ends up with, I think could be a good pick for them.
Piggybacking off of that, you're talking about Isaiah Simmons, obviously from Clemson. I think that a team that would love to get him, whether they have to trade up or if he fell to them, would be the Carolina Panthers at number 7, just because Luke Kuechly's retirement shocked pretty much everybody this year. So if he was available there at 7 for the Panthers team that really lacks an identity on defense, that'd be a huge get for them, and that'd be a great position for him as the Panthers start to rebuild and he gets to step into a little bit of a bigger role for the most part. But I agree, Isaiah Simmons, the versatility he shows will definitely probably make him the second best defensive player in this draft, if not overtaking Chase Young. That does it for players, of course. Now we're going to talk back to teams. Which team overall makes the biggest move in the draft? Whether it's a trade, maybe it'll shock us all, whatever it may be, and this move will get them into the playoffs or whatever it may be. Mick, we can go ahead and start with you. Which team makes the biggest move in the 2020 draft?
I don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, it's such a weird, with the fact that they're going towards a Zoom-esque kind of draft. I don't know how this is going to look. I know the NFL's come out and they've talked about being able to stop the clock if teams are talking about executing trades. I know a lot of people are kind of up for auction. The Colts are talking about moving Malik Hooker. The Niners have talked about trying to move down from both of their picks to get more picks in the draft. The Jamal Adams rumors with the Jets. I don't think he will be moved, but if he is moved, I could see a team like the Jaguars or the Cowboys looking to package a few picks to move Adams. The Lions have talked about trading down. I saw today the Redskins are even thinking about trading down. So it's going to be an interesting draft. I guess if I had to say a team that I think, as far as moving up to get a guy that they really want, I could see the Eagles or the Falcons moving up. I think the Eagles really love some of the wide receivers in this draft. They have openly talked about the fact that they like the top 3 receivers in this draft. I could see them making a big move up and giving Carson Wentz another weapon. So if I guess gun to my head, I'm picking the Eagles.
And I agree with the Eagles on that front of, they've been very vocal about the receivers, and as we all know, Carson Wentz needs help not only on the offensive line but in his receiver position. So I think the Eagles is a good pick. Blake, I didn't mean to cut you off. My pick, and I agree with you, Mick. I don't know. I think this Zoom thing's really going to throw some teams for a loop because, general managers in the league are a bunch of older generation, upper 50, 60, 70-year-olds that, let's face it, technology does not come that real easy to them. And whether they got someone in the room helping them, it's going to throw everyone for a little bit of a loop. But my pick, simply because I think them sitting there at 12, knowing who runs this organization and seeing all those quarterbacks that are available in the top 10, and we just can't help but go after one. I just think Las Vegas Raiders will make a move and go after one of these guys because, as we all know, John Gruden loves quarterbacks. I know he's got Mariota. I know he's got Carr. And I don't think he cares. I think he wants them all in his room, and he wants to talk shop with all of them. And I definitely think that they're ones to keep an eye on simply because John Gruden is the one running that organization.
Talking about it, in this question overall, I do agree with y'all. I think that Philadelphia is an eye for talent trying to move up for a Jerry Jeudy, a CeeDee Lamb. I've even seen reports of them taking a beat okay with a Justin Jefferson, things like that. On your end, Zach, I do see John Gruden just knowing how much he loves quarterbacks. And I also could see them staying content at 12, taking a guy like Jordan Love. But to me, I took this question, I thought about it this way. The team I expect to potentially make the biggest deal when it comes to draft day trades might be the Jacksonville Jaguars, just because the unrest, obviously, we all saw the Twitter tirade, you may have seen it, from Yannick Ngakoue just completely ripping apart the Jaguars front office. So they're going to try to move him. And I think with how much he's damaged his stock, unless they just trade him for a bag of chips, it's going to have to be, they may have to package a Leonard Fournette, something like that. Really just completely restart. It's something that I would not be surprised to see the Jaguars do if the price is right. So Leonard Fournette being on the move would not necessarily be a surprise to me. I don't necessarily value the Odell Beckham rumors that were earlier in the week as much, just because the Browns are still in a pretty decent spot, whereas the Jaguars might just look to completely redo it. And that's kind of why I thought about potentially if they go after a receiver in the draft, the Jaguars could be an interesting pick as that goes. Try and trade Yannick Ngakoue and Leonard Fournette. But the Jaguars are my pick when it comes to trying to get rid of those two talents off their team, trying to get rid of a little bit of unrest, and even try to move up into the draft a little bit from there. That's going to do it for the main topics. Now, for the last part of the podcast, we got one last thing to do, and we are going to do a 2020 3-4 podcast mock draft here on the pod. So the way this is going to work, basically, we're going to each make a pick 1 through 12. We're not going to do all 32 teams. Of course, Mick, you'll make the third pick, or excuse me, you'll make the second pick. My apologies. I will make the third pick, and Zach will make the first pick. We'll go on as so on and so forth until we hit pick 12. Basically, almost covering what the NBA would consider the lottery, almost. So we'll go ahead and make this easy. Zach, the Cincinnati Bengals are on the board, and who they pick with the number 1 pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals select.
Yeah, I mean, it's Joe Burrow. We've already beat this horse to death, but Ohio kid, Heisman Trophy winner, one of the best seasons that anyone's had in quite some time. And I mean, Cincinnati's been very vocal. The only thing I will say that is there are rumors, because there always are rumors, that Cincinnati potentially could trade down. I don't see it happening. I think they take Joe Burrow, and that's my pick.
there are no trades in this mock draft, so we're just going based on the draft order. Joe Burrow goes number 1 overall, which is to be expected so far, at least based on the rumors and the news that's been expected from the end of the season. So, Nathan McKenna, you're on the clock. Number 2, the Washington Redskins select
Chase Young, you talked about a lot earlier, but I just don't see them passing on a pass rusher.
I am now on the clock with the number 3 pick. The Detroit Lions select. To me, it's Jeff Okudah, cornerback from Ohio State. 2 Ohio State guys going off the board back to back. To me, I say that just because the Lions did trade Darius Slay this offseason to the Eagles. So they're going to look and try to get into some secondary help. Okudah's the best corner on the board, and I really don't even think it's that close for the most part. So I think the Lions are a hot team to potentially trade this pick down, try to move away from that third pick. However, I would not be surprised to see them keep it and take a Jeff Okudah there at number 3. Now it goes back to Zach with the 4th pick in the NFL draft. The New York Giants select.
Yeah, this one's tough. I think if anyone other than Dave Gettleman was running the Giants, they may trade down in this position. But Dave Gettleman's made it very clear in the past he's not big on moving. I thought about Isaiah Simmons here, but I think they'll take, if they're smart, they'll go with one of the offensive tackles. And the guy I'm going to go with here is Tristan Wirfs from Iowa. I'll be honest with you, I don't know, just because, as we all know, not big offensive line guy here. But everything you read on this kid, crazy talented offensive lineman, and exactly what the Giants need in this position to protect what they seem to believe is their franchise quarterback.
Tristan Wirfs is probably the best overall athletic talent at the tackle position, which again, there's 4 or 5 different tackles you can take early and be okay with. So Tristan Wirfs goes to number 4 to the Giants out of Iowa. Nathan McKenna, the 5th pick, the Miami Dolphins select.
Yeah, I think they go Herbert. I think they should go Tua, but I think they're going to go Justin Herbert. I think Brian Flores is just going to look at the guy and see a 6'6" potential Josh Allen-esque kind of clone, and he saw what was able to happen up at Buffalo. And if you can get that guy to be a little bit more accurate than that, especially with the moves they've made this free agency and kind of making them more of a well-rounded team, I have a feeling they're going to be able to trust in Herbert to be the guy at 5 and to lead the offense.
And you were talking about it, or we were talking about it before. Herbert's shooting up the draft class here, and he was projected before mid-first round pick. Now he's talked about, obviously, we're taking him 5 here in the mock draft. So this makes the 6th pick easy with the with the 6th pick in the NFL draft. The Los Angeles Chargers take Tua Tagovailoa. They're going to take a quarterback here, obviously, with Phillip Rivers leaving for Indianapolis, and Tua. We've raved about him enough on the podcast so far. You know all about him. He goes to the Chargers, which again, spectacular spot for him. I think if they were able to get him just because of the offensive firepower they have and being able to, they say, I think he'll really show out and his stats will go nuts if he goes to the Chargers at 6. With the 7th pick, Zach, the Carolina Panthers select.
If I was picking for the same team for 4 and 7, I would have done a really good job here, because here I'm picking Isaiah Simmons. Like we talked about earlier, Luke Kuechly retiring out of nowhere. They've got a hole with the linebacker position. One's an outside linebacker, one's a middle linebacker, but still, as I said earlier, I think Isaiah Simmons could potentially be the best defensive player in this draft, or at least 1A, 1B. So here I'm taking Isaiah Simmons.
Good pick there for the Panthers. They were able to get him at number 7. Number 8, the Arizona Cardinals select Nathan McKenna.
Yeah, I think they go. There's 2 ways I think they go here. Either I think they go tackle or with Derek Brown. I think they're going to go with Jarrett Wills. I think they're just going to get another guy, another big body that they can protect Kyler Murray, allow him to move around the pocket. Wills is athletic. I can't remember the exact stat, but it was over like 600 pass blocking attempts, and he allowed 1 sack in his career at Alabama. So I think they're going to go with a proven guy that's just going to be able to stay on that line for a long time.
Glad you mentioned that stat, because I had that actually right here. A phenomenal pass blocking guy who Kyler Murray, as we mentioned earlier, just won Offensive Rookie of the Year, so he'll need some protection. He's got the playmakers. Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins comes to Arizona this year, so they will bolster the line with 8th pick, as you said, with Jedrick Wills. With the 9th pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is a pick I could absolutely see them potentially trying to move, or either move up in the draft or down, whichever it may be. To me, I almost think that with the 9th pick, the Jaguars will take CeeDee Lamb, wide receiver from Oklahoma, just because this is a team, they are just not doing so great in the offseason. They traded just about everybody, and they're going to try to restart. They seem to be high on Gardner Minshew. I wouldn't necessarily if they try to trade down, try to draft a guy like Jordan Love. But if they were to stay in this position, I think CeeDee Lamb might be the pick for them right there, just because, again, he's a guy that if you get the ball to him in space, he can really make so many things happen with his legs. A run after catch specialist, and they get an identity in the receiving game with CeeDee Lamb at the 9th pick right there. With the 10th pick, the Cleveland Browns select Zach.
Yeah, so this one's tough because you've still got Derek Brown on the board, who should go in the top 10, but there's just a lot of talent in this year's draft. But for Cleveland, I think they go tackle, offensive tackle, that is. I mean, I think last year Baker was running for his life, and we know about all the talent they've got on that offensive side of the football. So I think they probably go with Becton out of Louisville. Everything you read about the kid, they're saying could be one of the most impactful players in the draft that you don't really talk about because we just don't talk about offensive tackle. So, yeah, Becton from Louisville at number 10.
I mentioned earlier that Tristan Wirfs might be the most athletic tackle in the draft, but you're talking about a guy like Mekhi Becton. He is probably the best blend of athleticism and size for the most part. Really do it all kind of tackle. Again, pass blocking a premium, and him going to Cleveland, he'll try to replace or he'll try to protect Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb, try to get him another big season he had last year. With the 11th pick, your hometown New York Jets, Nathan McKenna select.
Well, I think they, in this particular draft, they're taking the most pro-ready tackle, which, considering with the coronavirus and everything going on, I think the offensive line is not going to have as much time, if we even get football this year, to kind of mesh together. So just being able to have a guy that's already pro-ready coming out of Georgia, Andrew Thomas, I think is the absolute steal here at 11. I think there's a good chance he could go at 4 to the Giants. I think he could go really at any spot that we've already drafted a tackle to. I think I would not be surprised if Thomas is even the first guy taken just because of how pro-ready he is. He might not necessarily have the ceiling that Becton would have or even Wills, but I think from day one you're going to get consistent play out of Thomas right out of the gate.
And going on to the number 12 pick, the Las Vegas Raiders select in their first season in Vegas. When you're talking about this team, as we've said, Derek Brown is still on the board at this point. And in the real draft, he may not fall, but just goes to show you how talented this class really is. And Brown might also be a player that could go to Jacksonville at number 9, especially if they do end up trading Yannick Ngakoue. But when you take a look at the Las Vegas Raiders, their team needs, I know I've already said a receiver so far, but I think Jerry Jeudy goes here just because Derek Carr is still going to be at quarterback. They also got Mariota. Again, as Zach mentioned, it would not surprise me to see them try to move, whether it's up or down, try to get a guy like Herbert or Tua, and even moving down to, again, a guy like Jordan Love. But I think right now, based on what they have, the receiving game needs a little bit of work, and I think Jerry Jeudy brings that to the table for the Raiders, an athletic guy who can go up and make plenty of catches. We saw him at Alabama just rip apart defenses, and it seemed like it was effortless. So I think the Raiders will take the flashy play of Jerry Jeudy at the number 12 pick if he is available at that time. So with that, that's going to do it for our mock draft. Of course, plenty of other picks left to go, and if you don't want to miss the draft as far as Thursday night. It's going to be a little bit of a different look compared to other ones, obviously with the coronavirus situation, but a lot of teams, a lot of talent getting what they need with a guy like, again, even the first 12 picks, Derek Brown did not go in our mock draft. He may not fall that far in real life, but just goes to show you how much talent is there anyways. That's going to do it for the first episode here of the 3-4 podcast. If you like what you heard today, then be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Subscribe to the channel, give it a like, things like that, just that way we can know what to do for the upcoming podcasts. This was a lot of fun to record, and I do really appreciate Mick and Zach for coming on to the pod and spending a little bit of time talking about the draft. Again, the draft is Thursday night, so you won't want to miss that, seeing the newest stars from the NFL coming on and seeing where they're going to call the next few years their home. With that being said, signing off for now, I'm Blake Holmes, and for Nathan McKenna and Zach Holmes, thank you once again. We'll see you next time.